Today, we are going to get into a really radical philosophical idea. It comes from Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari, and trust me, it challenges the very foundations of how we structure pretty much everything: knowledge, the world, even ourselves.
But first, just think about it for a second. When you need to understand something complicated, what's your go-to method? How do you mentally file away information or ideas or even experiences? Chances are you instinctively reach for structures like these, right? Family trees, org charts, the chapters in a book. They're all hierarchical, top-down systems that start from a single point and then branch out. This is what Deleuze and Guattari called arborescent thinking, or, just tree-like thinking. And that brings us right to the heart of it. On one side, you have this classical, really rigid tree model of thought. And on the other, you have this dynamic, interconnected, and frankly, kind of wild alternative that they called the rhizome. So here's our game plan. We'll start by exploring that world of trees, then we'll introduce the rhizome, see how it actually works, dig into its most powerful idea, find some examples out in the wild, and then we'll finish up with a call to action. All right, let's dive right into this first part. We're going to look at that traditional root tree model that has, for centuries, just completely dominated Western thought. In this model, knowledge literally works like a tree. A book has a central spine, right? An idea has one main point, a single root, and everything else just branches out from there. The one becomes two, the two become four, and on it goes. This way of thinking is so deep in our culture, it just shows up everywhere. For a linguist like Noam Chomsky, it's those grammatical trees that trace every sentence back to a single root. In psychoanalysis, it's these structures that trace our entire psyche back to some core complex. It's a logic that always starts from one single unified point, and then just divides.
But what if there's another way? This is where we get to the alternative. It's where Deleuze and Guattari basically tell us to stop thinking about roots and start thinking about grass. Now, what's so cool here is that the rhizome isn't just some fancy metaphor. Nope, it's a botanical reality. Just think of a piece of ginger. It's a stem that grows sideways, underground. It has no central point, no main root. You can snap a piece off, and that piece will just keep on growing. So what else is a rhizome? Well, think about a stubborn weed that just spreads all over your lawn. Or a potato, a pack of rats moving together, an ant colony. You can even think of a city, like Amsterdam, with its whole interconnected network of canals, as a kind of rhizome city.
So how does this model actually operate? Let's get into its core principles, because this is where the whole idea really comes to life. Okay, let's break these down. First step is connection. Basically, any point of a rhizome can be connected to any other point. This means you can link totally different things, like science connecting with art or a book connecting to a political movement. Second is multiplicity. A rhizome isn't made of tidy little units you can count, 1, 2, 3. It's made of lines and dimensions that are always shifting. That's why the formula is n-1. You always have to subtract the idea of a single unifying one. And third, a signifying rupture. You can break it, but it'll just pop back up somewhere else. I mean, you can never really get rid of ants, can you? That's because their colony is a perfect animal rhizome.
And this next part just brilliantly illustrates that principle of connection. Get this, the incredible example of the wasp and the orchid. The orchid evolves to look like a female wasp, which then tricks the male wasp into trying to mate with it, and in the process, pollinating it. When this happens, the wasp becomes a literal piece of the orchid's reproductive system. They form a rhizome. It's a becoming wasp of the orchid and a becoming orchid of the wasp. They don't just imitate each other, they become part of a shared interconnected machine. It's just wild.
So, this all leads to maybe the most powerful idea of all, understanding the difference between a map and a tracing. This is the rhizome in action, and it is such a powerful tool for thinking differently. A tracing is, well, it's just a copy. It reproduces a model that's already there. Think of psychoanalysis tracing every single desire back to Oedipus. It organizes things, it stabilizes them, but it never, ever creates anything new. It's just following a line that's already been drawn.
A map, on the other hand, a map is an active tool for exploration. It's like the difference between a student who studies by just tracing the textbook, memorizing facts in order, and a student who makes a map by connecting an idea from chapter 3 to something they saw in a movie, creating a totally new understanding. A map is an experiment.
And here it is. This is the real aha moment. A map doesn't just represent the world as it is. It actively constructs new realities, new connections, new possibilities. It literally produces the unconscious, instead of just taking a picture of it.
And once you really get this map versus tracing idea, I promise you'll start to see rhizomes popping up everywhere, from the natural world to the way your own mind works. Deleuze and Guattari argue that the brain itself isn't some rigid tree. It's much more like grass, with messages just leaping across gaps. Our short-term memory is rhizomatic. It connects distant ideas through these sudden sparks. And then, forgetting. And get this, they even point to the Pink Panther, who doesn't imitate anything, but instead paints the whole world his own color, pink on pink, as a rhizome in action. And they saw America, especially the shifting frontiers of the West, as this great human rhizome.
So look, this isn't just some descriptive philosophy. They end their introduction with these powerful, almost slogan-like commands. It's a genuine call to action. They are urging us to embrace movement and connection. Don't get stuck on static points or fixed identities. Instead, you've got to create lines. Lines of flight, lines of chance. Always be in motion, always be connecting. And finally, maybe the most crucial idea of all. They tell us to abandon the rigid verb to be, which just fixes your identity. Instead, embrace the creative, connective power of the word and. The fabric of the rhizome is always and. It's this, and that, and something else entirely. So that's the rhizome. It's a way of thinking that really values connection over hierarchy and creation over just reproduction. And it leaves all of us with a pretty powerful question. Where in your own world can you stop following the pre-drawn lines and start making your own map?